KPBS On Demand is supported by UC San Diego's Art Power, presenting sitar virtuoso Anushka Shankar, performing from her new album, Chapter 3, We Return to Light, March 16th at UC San Diego's Epstein Family Amphitheater. For tickets and more information, visit artpower.ucsd.edu.
Welcome in San Diego, it's Jade Hindman. The bird flu has gone from birds to cattle and, well, now on to cats. Today, we'll talk about how to keep your pets safe. This is KPBS Midday Edition, connecting our communities through conversation. Last week, San Diego County announced its first case of bird flu found in a house cat. That case is still under investigation, but since then, several other cats across the state have also contracted bird flu. So as this virus continues to spread and even jump species, what's the risk to public health and other pets? Well, here to answer that is Dr. Zara Hedge. She's the Chief Medical Officer with the San Diego Humane Society. Dr. Hedge, welcome to Midday Edition.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you here. First, what do we know about the bird flu and how it's being transmitted to cats?
Yeah, I think every day we're learning something new as this virus continues to mutate and change. Right now, what we know with regards to our pets, in particular cats, is that we have seen several cats get this disease. Most commonly, it is from exposure to and consumption of raw or unpasteurized milk and raw pet food products. There are also some cats that were exposed that lived on farms, so exposure to cattle, which may have also been exposure to raw milk again.
So as you mentioned, raw food, raw milk, those have been the main culprits for cats getting the virus. Can you talk more about what pet owners need to do to ensure the food they're giving them is safe?
The recommendations now, and what I would recommend is to avoid feeding raw pet food. And what raw pet food is it's food that's not being cooked to that temperature where if you or I are cooking meat for our consumption, we would want to cook it up to the recommended temperature to kill any viruses or bacteria. There are a lot of different raw pet food products on the market. They can come as raw frozen, they might be freeze-dried or dehydrated. And they might also be treats or food toppers. So avoiding raw pet food, in particular poultry products, is going to be key to keeping your cats and your dogs safe, as well as not giving them raw or unpasteurized milk products.
Have any of those products ever been safe for the pets, though?
No, there are a lot of risks to feeding raw foods, not just bird flu. Certainly, we know there are a lot of different bacteria or viruses that they can become exposed to through eating raw diets. There's also a risk to human health because we would be the ones potentially handling that food. And so there's a risk both for people and animals, which is why we don't recommend feeding raw diets to our pets.
I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but what about raw eggs or like easy over eggs? Should people be avoiding those?
I would also recommend avoiding those. Certainly, if you want to give your pets eggs or chicken or other meats, you want to make sure that you cook it just as you would cook it for yourself to eat, because that's going to ensure that it's reached the right temperature to kill any bacteria or viruses that might be present.
What symptoms should pet owners be on the lookout for with bird flu?
So when it comes to our cats, and I'm going to focus mostly on cats because wild dogs, certainly they are at risk. We have not had any cases of bird flu in dogs, but in cats, things that we have seen are severe respiratory signs, including difficulty breathing and sudden development of neurologic signs. And so these signs are fairly what we call nonspecific, meaning that there are a lot of other things that could cause them. So certainly if you see this in your cat, don't automatically think that it could be bird flu, but certainly contact your veterinarian and take them in to be seen. And if your veterinarian feels like there is a risk, they will test them for bird flu.
So if cats can get infected with bird flu, what about other pets like dogs? Are they at risk too?
Yes, dogs are also at risk. However, we've not seen any cases in dogs so far. It really seems to be cats. Certainly, other pets in the home I don't know that we have a lot of information. I know a lot of people have backyard poultry, backyard chickens, so they are at risk, and so you want to make sure that you're doing things to keep your backyard chickens safe as well, and keeping them away from migratory birds as much as possible.
Okay, so not so much common in dogs. So are there any cases where it's spread to dogs?
I don't believe that we've had any cases where it's spread to dogs. Certainly not with this current outbreak. Dogs do have their own flu. I'm sure if people have heard dogs have heard about canine influenza. That's a different strain, and there is a vaccine for that strain. This is something different. So yes, there is a risk, and certainly I would try to take steps to lower that risk, including not feeding raw food. But that risk seems to be very low right now, and it really seems to be something we're seeing more in cats.
Mm. Well, aside from cats, many people in our region have backyard chicken coops. I mean,
Yep.
how should they be keeping those birds safe, you think?
Yeah, so if you've got backyard chickens or other poultry, you want to make sure as much as you can to keep them in an area that you can provide covering, and that they're kind of enclosed as much as you can, because you want to prevent direct contact between them and migratory birds, which can carry this virus. You also want to try to avoid having pools of water where it might invite migratory birds to come and spend time in your yard. And certainly, if you're bringing new chickens into your flock, you want to keep them isolated for 4 to 6 weeks to make sure that they are not going to have anything that could infect your current flock of chickens.
Well, also, there are a lot of people who care for livestock. What should they know to protect their animals and themselves?
I think right now where we're really seeing a lot of these cases are cattle. So certainly cattle are at risk. If you are, let's say, maybe you work with other species during the day and you have your own pets at home, you want to make sure that you're changing shoes, potentially clothes, before you're going into your house, especially if you're working on a farm with livestock. We do know that several different species of mammals can be affected, but at this time, it really seems like the big players are cattle and cats, as well as poultry.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about concerns for public health, because that seems to be the elephant in the room as well. How common is it that people contract this virus from their pets or other animals?
So at this point in time, the public health risk is low, and we've not seen any cases of people contracting it, or at least nothing's come out yet to show that people have gotten this from, let's say, their pet cat that had it. We do know some of the human cases had exposure to farms, and so there is that risk potentially. But at this point, the public health risk for this is low. However, I think it's important that people stay informed and watch this closely, as things seem to be changing almost daily or weekly.
What measures are you implementing at the San Diego Humane Society to protect yourselves and the animals you work with?
So we've had protocols here in place for several years, mostly pertaining to wildlife, since we do take in a lot of wild birds, and poultry, because we do take in a lot of domestic waterfowl. And so some of those precautions have been keeping certain species isolated, especially for wildlife, and making sure our staff have the right personal protective equipment, face coverings, masks, gloves, gowns, when they're working with suspect species. We've recently also implemented some more changes with regards to cats that come in with neurologic signs or severe respiratory signs, mostly to keep our staff safe and to protect the cats here. We place those animals in isolation while we're working with them, and we make sure our staff have the right protective equipment so that they can stay safe as well.
You mentioned neurological symptoms. What would those look like?
For cats, what we've seen are things like seizures. They might be circling or having trouble walking. It could really look like anything, but those have been some of the things that we've seen in cats that have avian influenza. A little bit tricky because there are a lot of things that can cause those types of symptoms, including rabies virus. And so that's why it's really important as well that we make sure all of our pets are up to date on their vaccines. But those are kind of some of the things that we've seen in cats with bird flu.
And just to be clear, what should people do if they suspect their cat has bird flu?
Anyone who has any concerns, I would recommend reaching out to your veterinarian, making an appointment, either in person or a telemedicine appointment, to have that conversation and figure out what the risk is. Because the risk, while we're seeing a lot of these cases, the risk still remains quite low. But certainly, if let's say your cat has had exposure to raw pet foods, unpasteurized milk, farms, different things like that, their risk could go up. And so reach out to your veterinarian, reach out to your local public health agency if you're concerned as well, if you've got backyard poultry, and then get more information and go from there.
All right. I mean, typically, is this something that, will just clear up on its own?
It's hard to say what will happen. We've seen this disease affect cats before. It was a different strain of avian influenza back in 2016, and it kind of died out. And so certainly it's quite possible. This has been kind of going on now for several years. And so it's hard to know what will end up happening with this as the virus continues to mutate and jump into different species. So hopefully this will die out and it will become less of a concern, but certainly it's something that people should be aware of and stay informed of as things are changing.
All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Zara Hedge, Chief Medical Officer with the San Diego Humane Society. You can find more information on how to manage bird flu with your pets at sdhumane.org/bird flu. Dr. Hedge, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. I'm your host, Jade Hindman. Thanks for tuning in to Midday Edition. Be sure to have a great day on purpose, everyone.
KPBS On Demand is supported by UC San Diego, offering an online Master of Data Science program that equips professionals with the skills to tackle real-world challenges by turning data into innovation. Flexible, 100% online learning. Get started at omds.ucsd.edu.